Hello and welcome to the Advice Show. It's the first show of the week which brings you general advice, ideas and thoughts on a whole range of subjects. Today we're going to be discussing how to get into the hospitality industry. Joining me on the sofa today is Baten, who is an operations manager in a major hotel in Manchester city centre. If you have any questions for Paris today, you can tweet us at That's Manchester using our hashtag MCRAdvice, or text the word advice and your message to 07548 200 007. Paris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I think first of all, how did you get yourself into the hospitality industry?
Well, prior to getting into hospitality, I used to work for an airline, and I just didn't know what to do after working for a big airline, and I moving from Orpington in Kent to North, and was staying in different hotels around the world, and I thought, why not get into a hotel? So I walked into a hotel and applied and got my first ever job as a receptionist.
How was that progression really? I mean, because you've come from reception area. I mean, that in itself must be quite a challenging position.
It was very challenging. I mean, I was very lucky, to be honest. I started as a receptionist, and I think about 3 months later I became reception supervisor, and very shortly after with another hotel I became night auditor, night manager, front office manager, and it just progressed from there. There you are. So now I'm working in a hotel.
I mean, the night shift, I'd imagine that's quite a stressful environment.
Very stressful, very challenging. Very, very challenging indeed. Dealing with lots of unruly customers, to drunk people, to people from all walks of life generally. Yeah.
I mean, with a night shift as well, I mean, must be a lot of pressure because you've got quite a skeleton crew running at that point. You haven't got all the kitchen staff, or certainly not the same level of kitchen staff.
Yeah.
I mean, do you get a kind of camaraderie in that kind of environment?
Yeah, there is, there's a rapport, with the people who does work in the night team. You sort of look out for each other, and because you do work at night, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility that goes with it. Obviously, because you work in a night shift, you're potentially looking for a lot of lives at the same time. So, if there was a fire or a flood or anything like that, it's your shoulders. So you have to be, on guard at all times, what's going around, so you don't sneak off and go to bed in one of the rooms, you're not supposed to.
I mean, what's been a difficult thing that you've had to encounter on that kind of late night environment? I
mean, it is difficult because in terms of social life and so on, because all your friends are going out partying and you're there working on night shifts. But then again, you're not working every single day. You do have a couple of days, and if you want certain days off, you can sort of arrange that with your managers or whoever. But I think people who work nights, they generally tend to stick to nights, and people who work days, they stick to days. But if people who wants to get into obviously industry, I think working on nights, you learn so much because you learn about the figures, which is very, very important. It's very knowledgeable working on nights. Let's put it that way.
So for anyone looking to get in, it's a great experience. Is it almost a rite of passage?
In a way, I think it is. People who does want to get into hospitality industry, I would suggest to not just get into the hotel industry itself, just any kind of customer service base. So at least what it's like to deal with customers in general, or even just working in a hotel. You don't have to work in the front desk. There's so many other departments. You can work in the restaurant. You can work in housekeeping. But there's an element of customer interaction that there is, I mean, at the moment we have a lot of, Polish community who comes to Britain who doesn't necessarily have to speak a lot of English, so they get a job in housekeeping, where, they can communicate, but obviously not up to the level where you can check in somebody and so on. So yeah, I mean, they do just as, good job as anybody else, working in housekeeping and other departments as well, so. Yeah.
I mean, talking a little about the figures that you mentioned, and yeah, what is it about understanding those that sort of helps, if you like, to understand the whole of the hospitality?
If you want to progress, obviously in the hospitality, in the hotel industry, obviously you need to know the figures, the average occupancy, and what the amount of business you're taking in, what transition, obviously the kind of people are coming into the city, because obviously when you're doing the night audit, for instance, you get to see all the figures in writing, because obviously you have to print it out and make sure you're doing the balancing and so on. It helps because you're not necessarily looking for it, but you can't help but seeing all the figures. So you're automatically learning, sort of not directly but indirectly. It sort of soaks in. So if you wanted to know what was the average room rate, you would know what was the occupancy first of all, and you would need to know what the average room rate was. It'll just come to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
that kind of, I suppose once you immerse yourself, it almost becomes kind of second nature, and things just pop in, which is fantastic. Now, in terms of you yourself personally, coming up from Kent up to Manchester must have been a bit like a fish out of water, really. Big
transition. It was a little bit difficult for me. I mean, once you're a southerner, you never seem to adjust with the northerners.
We're quite friendly up here, I think, largely. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the most challenging thing would be really, because a big part of your industry, I would think, would be about learning a lot about the local environment so that you can possibly help, your customers.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, working in the hospitality, if you're especially working in the front desk, I think local knowledge is very, very important too. For instance, if somebody comes in who's come from out of town and they want to go to a nice restaurant, it's you can just recommend them a nice Italian, nice Chinese or nice Indian, but if you've literally come in and you don't know, you start looking at Google to find out, to recommend or having to ask your colleagues, but I think, wherever you go, I think just a little bit of knowledge of, if there's any nice museums or art galleries for people to go and see, if there's any events happening in Manchester, if there's anything in the MEN Arena or any bike rides or big events, the Pride or anything like that. Just local knowledge is very, very important to obviously give good customer service at the front desk.
I mean, how did you adjust that? Did you immerse yourself in Manchester, I suppose?
I mean, I just, moving up, from south to north, I mean, I did go out on a night out, and even though I live in another town from, Manchester, and I tend to go out in Manchester because it is, after London, I find Manchester is the sort of second city.
Not after London, not after London.
Just my opinion. But it is a wonderful city, and for me, I was into a lot of art museums and dining out and so on. So I think it just came naturally. If I liked something, if I knew a nice good Italian restaurant or a nice steakhouse, and if a customer recommended me to recommend them, so obviously I would just say, okay, why not go there? It was really nice. I had a really good time there, and so on.
I mean, I suppose that's quite a crucial part. Is do customers then, at the end of their stay, come and find you if you're able to pass this information on?
Oh yeah, they always tend to, if they had a good experience and so on, or even if it's a bad one, they always tend to say, oh, that person, recommended me that restaurant, please, give my thanks to them, for recommending them, it's just making them, have a good time in our city.
I mean, that must be quite a satisfying part of the job, really.
It is very satisfying because you're just going out of your way to just make sure they're having a good time while they're coming. Because at the end of the day, they are potentially paying your wages. So if you're looking after them, they probably will come back again, and pay your wages. I guess it's not the owners who pay. I think it's the customers.
I suppose moving on from that, in terms of looking after customers, and I mean, is it addictive?
It's very, very addictive. Working in the hospitality industry, it doesn't matter if you leave, you definitely will come back. I think with any kind of, whether you're working in a cafe or any restaurant or in the hotel, I think just anywhere in general, customer orientation is very, very addictive. Once you go in, I think it's very, very hard to get out of. Or if you have left, you always tend to come back. I've noticed a lot of people who's left the hotel industry and they didn't last. They wanted to just get an office job, and they came back, 6 months later. They just wanted that interaction.
I mean, is it more the kind of things that customers are able to sort of give back in terms of that feedback? I mean, is that something that then helps someone progress? Maybe are they able? Does that help them get spotted and allow them to move forward?
Yeah, of course. There are a lot of people who gets promotion very quickly in the hotel industry. If somebody's very sort of have that likability factor, they start off obviously working in reception, and then if they have that nice understanding, they probably will go to sales or events. And there are a lot of people who are just happy with the role they have. They just stick to reception, or just working on nights or any other role. But when people do recommend after to the management, they tend to just go into whatever. They get promotion very quickly through that way because of what customers said.
Absolutely excellent. Well, we will be chatting more with Paris after the break, so don't go away, and we'll see you again shortly.